Could open the roll, please?
You want to hit Rome?
Okay, we're gonna be these for just a moment while members proxy out or if they need to.
So we need
Should we start with identical bills anyway? It's 30 minutes after adjournment. Might as well, right?
Yep.
Okay, welcome to the Senate General Laws and Technology Committee. Before we get to the sign-up list, we're going to take up a referral, and then we'll start with some bills that were identical to bills that had passed this committee and the Senate. First, HB 736 from Delegate Sewell. I would entertain a motion to re-refer that bill to Commerce and Labor.
So moved.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor of re-referring HB 736 to Commerce and Labor, please indicate their preference.
Ayes 12, no 0.
Okay, that bill is re-referred. Now, we're going to take up 13 identical bills that passed I think most of them passed unanimously. First, we have HB 279 from Delegate Helmer, which is identical to SB 401 from Senator Durant about military leaves of absence, I should say, for employees of the Commonwealth for professional firefighters. That passed this committee unanimously. Is there a motion?
Move the report and re-refer to Finance.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to recommend reporting and referral to Senate Finance. Please indicate your preference on the electronic voting board. Okay, that bill is.
Ayes 12, no 0.
That bill is reported and referred. Now we have HB 287 from Delegate Wiley, which is identical to SB 184 from Senator Rouse on expanding the definition of geological mapping. Passed reported unanimously from this committee, and then passed the Senate unanimously. I'll entertain a motion to report. Okay. Please indicate your preference for HB 287 on the electronic voting board.
Ayes 12, no 0.
Next we have, thank you. Next we have HB 352 from Delegate Glass, identical to Senator Perry's SB 213, Virginia Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, early termination for military personnel with the stop movement order. There's a motion to report and a second, and please indicate your preference on the electronic voting board. Okay. Senator Locke, we're just doing some identical bills, and the next one is.
You want to hit the button? Hit your green button there. There you go.
Oh, it's green button.
Ayes 13, no 0.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, HB 383 from Delegate Reeser deals with DPOR, identical to SB 330 from Senator Jordan about continuing education requirements for real estate brokers and salespersons. Okay, there's a motion and a second to report HB 383. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 13, no 0.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have HB 477 from Delegate Coiner, which is identical to Senator Locke's SB 50 eviction diversion pilot program.
Second.
Motion and second to report HB 477. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 13, no 0.
The next, if successful, would be reported to reported and referred to Senate Finance from Delegate Krizak, HB 523, identical to Senator Reeves's SB 344. This is about charitable gaming, and the percentage is okay. There's a motion and a second to report and re-refer to Finance, HB 523. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 13, no 0.
Okay.
This one's the fun.
Next one, HB 526 from Delegate Krizak, identical to Senator Durant's SB 408 about charitable organization registration fees. And that motion would be to report and re-refer to finance if successful.
Second.
Okay. And that was passed on a divided vote from this committee with just Senator Locke and I dissenting.
Building finance.
And then sent to finance. So all in favor, please indicate your preference on the voting board.
What's the motion?
To report and refer to finance.
Ayes 8, noes 4, 1 abstention.
Okay. Next up is from Delegate Price, identical to HB 597, identical to SB 479 of Senator Aird's on the allowing localities.
Second.
Motion second to allow localities to enforce the Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 14, no 0.
Okay, that bill reports. HB 843 from Delegate Austin, a gaming bill identical to Senator Deeds' SB 426 on historical horse racing, the percentage retained for distribution, passed unanimously from this committee.
Move to report.
There's a motion and a second to report. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you. Okay, that reports. Next, from Delegate Bennett Parker is HB 894, identical to Senator Marston's SB 734 on FOIA.
Move to report. Second.
Motion and a second to report this bill in electronic meetings. All in favor, please indicate your preference. Senator Rum.
Mr. Chairman, could you recite the vote count on the cognate bill, please?
I got the amendment on the next one.
What was the vote count on the cognate bill from the Senate?
On the bill that we're voting on now,
Yes.
35-4.
I believe that you
Abstained.
you abstained on the original vote
Yep.
in the committee. And
Voted no on the floor.
yeah, otherwise it passed the committee with that one dissenting or one abstention. So this is a FOIA bill identical to Senator Marsden's on electronic meetings. Is there a motion to report?
Move to report.
Okay, so we'll vote on HB 894 on the voting board, please.
Ayes 14, no 0, 1 abstention.
Okay, the next bill, HB 917, there's, this bill did, before we take a motion, this bill passed, it's a DPOR bill defining real estate broker, and it passed this committee and the Senate unanimously. However, we have a technical amendment.
Move the amendment.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion, a second, to add a comma on line 279 after negotiates.
Wow.
All in favor of adding that comma, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now we have a very similar bill, HB 917 to Senator Van Valkenburg's 358. There's a motion and a second to report this DPOR bill about real estate brokers. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Shannon. I hope your conference committee will go okay on that comma. Okay. HB 1040, Delegate Bennett Parker on FOIA is identical to Senator Favola's SB 85, dealing with the definition of caregiver and remote participation in meetings. This bill reported unanimously from this committee previously and passed the Senate 28-11.
Move to report.
Second.
So motion and a second to report HB 1040. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
No, there's a no. There were, to clear, sorry. There were negative votes on that. No.
I've got according to this, it passed our committee unanimously and passed the Senate 28-11.
I just want to make sure folks know that.
Okay. Yeah, in committee, it passed this committee unanimously, though. Okay,
Ayes 13, noes 2.
thank you. Okay, that reports. So then we go to HB 1130.
Does the patron have amendments?
Oh, yes,
Mr.
Delegate.
Chair, I'm sorry. The bill started out identical. There was a floor amendment on the Senate version. I would be happy for you all to conform to that version if that's the most expeditious.
Okay, let's,
Mr. Chairman,
Senator
having voted on the prevailing side by which we just reported, HB 1040, I move to reconsider that vote.
Okay, all in favor of reconsidering the vote will vote aye on the voting board.
Ayes
Okay.
15, no 0.
Delegate Bennett Parker, you said there was an amendment in which,
Move to conform to Senate Bill 85.
So moved. Second.
okay, all in favor of conforming the two bills will indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Move to report.
Any opposed? Okay.
Move to report the substitute.
Okay, there's a motion to report the substitute to HB 1040, which is now identical to SB 85. A motion and a second. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
Thank you, Delegate Bennett Parker. Okay, HB 1131 next. If successful, the motion would be to report and refer to Senate Finance. This removes the city of Richmond as an eligible host city for casino gaming establishments.
Not requested by finance.
Oh, it was not requested.
This
Wait,
is
let me just check my letter. I've got a letter here from Finance. What was the number we're on?
11:13. It's 11:31.
11:31.
Yeah, no, it does go to Finance,
No,
yeah.
it's 11:13.
We were voting on 1131 from Delegate Betsy Carr,
Okay.
and Finance has requested it, so.
That's right.
Okay, so the motion was to report and refer to Finance. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Sorry about that.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay. Okay, now we're coming up to some similar and other bills. The first bill from Delegate Krizak is about limits on required local referendums, saying that the governing body of any eligible host city that holds a referendum on the question whether casino gaming should be permitted that subsequently fails should be prohibited from holding another referendum on the same question for a period of 3 years from the date of the last referendum. And this is the same result as what was incorporated into Senator Aird's SB 628. It's my understanding that we can pass this without a conflict, Joanne? This one, 525 from Krizak, if we pass that, it was similar also to SB 345 from Senator Reeves.
Yes, that's correct.
And my understanding is we don't have to worry about conforming. We can just
That's correct.
pass it and have the same result. Okay. So is there a motion to report and refer to Finance? Okay, there's a motion and a second to report and refer HB 525 to Finance. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
525 wasn't requested, but
My letter says it was requested.
okay. This letter wasn't updated then.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
Let me double check.
Okay. Next, we have HB 991 from Delegate Maldonado on gambling data, use of cloud technology. This bill is similar to Senator Bagby's HB 540. And Joanne, do we need to conform this or? Okay, and are you okay with that?
Yes,
Okay.
we have an amendment that conforms it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so there's a motion, is there a motion and a second?
Move to conform.
Okay, to conform HB 991 to SB 540. Please indicate a motion and a second. Please indicate your preference by saying aye if you support it. Aye. Okay, any opposed? Okay, now is there a motion?
Move to report and refer to Finance.
Second.
Okay, motion and second to pass and recommend reporting and refer to finance. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Thank you, Delegate. Is that your whole docket for us? Okay, well, be patient with us. Okay, now I guess we should go to the sign-up sheet. I have Delegate Cherry first. And what is your bill number?
Mr. Chairman, we will be referencing House Bill 1412.
Okay. 1412 is a FOIA bill.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Comes out of the great work that Senator Locke and I have done, working so diligently to make sure that the people of Virginia are informed. This is actually a small exception to the provision. The bill provides that personal contact information would be exempt from mandatory disclosure under FOIA with respect to an investigation of individual zoning complaints related to the Uniform Statewide Building Code or Statewide Fire Prevention Code. The code currently exempts the name, address, and telephone number from mandatory disclosure. This would simply add email to that identifying information that would be exempt from a FOIA request. The FOIA Council voted 9-0 in favor of the recommendation, and has also passed the House 100-0.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Delegate Cherry?
Do we care about that?
Okay,
So, Mr. Chairman,
Do we care about that?
Senator Rome.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for the patron.
Senator Rome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So question of patron on this is, what is the situation that came up that actually spurred the need for this in the first place? You know, obviously when we were in the House together, I tend to be very skeptical of FOIA exemptions in general. Is there a particular reason or a particular abuse that someone's email being disclosed turned out to be a problem?
Actually, this came from the city of Stanton, who had an issue with it. The reason the FOIA Council believed this should be a valid exemption was because of the identifying information that's typically in someone's email address, particularly a government email address that has their full name. And this deals specifically with people that are trying to answer a complaint through the statewide building code. And so they thought it was needlessly specific to those individuals that may be overseeing complaints. And obviously when you have complaints filed, people sometimes tend to get frustrated by that and not wanting to identify building code individuals that are investigating those claims.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up question. Mr. Chairman, I'd ask the witness in this case, is the issue of the emails being from people who are issuing the complaints or the people who the complainants are basically, you know, filing their complaint about?
Mr. Chairman, I would tell the senator it's for the government individuals that are investigating those claims.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question to the Executive Director from the FOIA Advisory Council?
Senator Rome, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, would the witness be able to kind of elaborate on this point of what is the harm that is being caused right now under the existing code, and how does this remedy that harm?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alan Gernhardt, Executive Director of the FOIA Council. And to answer the Senator's question, I think the easiest way to understand the existing exemption is our colloquial reference to it, which is the feuding neighbors exemption. This is somebody has called in a complaint about building, fire code, or zoning ordinance, between, usually it's one neighbor complaining about another neighbor, and then the neighbor who's been complained about says, I want to know who made that complaint. And there's a concern that it'll escalate and there'll be retribution, that kind of thing. And so the existing one is just to protect that, and this just adds email to the existing one.
If I could just follow up, isn't it already the case that the names, addresses, and phone numbers of complainants are shielded from public release, and this just updates it for the information age?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
You can email her.
Can do. Thank you.
She's unlisted. Thank you. Okay, next up we have Delegate Taylor, and after that will be Delegate Carr. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Today I'm here to present HB 52. This simply allows for alkaline hydrolysis, also known as aquamation, to exist as an option for funerary services. It would also bring alkaline hydrolysis under the same regulations as cremation. This process accelerates the body's natural decomposition through a combination of water flow, temperature, and alkalinity. Aquamation produces far less carbon dioxide and does not emit mercury into the air in the way traditional cremation does, and is considered a green funerary option. Currently, the closest place this service is offered is in North Carolina. 20 other states, including California, Colorado, Georgia, and West Virginia, have passed similar legislation into law. This bill, as passed, was bipartisan support in the House, and I ask the committee to advance this legislation.
Thank you. Are there members of the panel with questions of Delegate Taylor? Okay, are there, yes, Senator Head.
Yeah, thank you. Question for the patron. Just, I recall this has come up in years past, and I understand where we're trying to go with this, but this process basically liquefies a body, and so not to be insensitive, but ultimately this is, in essence, you are washing grandma down the drain, if that is
That's not necessarily the case. The family has access to the remains in an urn similar to cremation.
Okay.
Okay, are there those here today to speak in favor of HB 52? Would you like to come forward? Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. First of all, thank you for having this hearing. My name is Adrian Gardner. I am a co-founder of a company called Green Legacy that is working very hard to become the first green funeral company that's available to families in the District of Columbia, Maryland, Virginia area. And we're looking at real estate. We're looking for a home. My co-founding partner is a licensed Virginia mortician and embalmer. And I want to leave plenty of time for comments or questions, but I did want to make three very simple points. From a micro level, most conventional burial methods have a significant environmental impact. And alkaline hydrolysis, water cremation, aquamation is an option that allows a much, much lesser impact. On a micro level, we're talking about perhaps 10% of the energy. We're talking perhaps between 10 and 20%. And actually, to Senator Head's point, it's just a different way to give the family ashes. Those ashes can be used the exact same way as other ashes are used. They can be inurned. They can be buried, including, for example, in Arlington Cemetery, where in Arlington National Cemetery, there are limited green options. This would give an option for that location. Second point, from a macro level, the fact is about 70,000 people die each year in Virginia. And at this point, more than half of them are choosing cremation. More than half. That trend is expected to continue to 2040, when we're expecting the percentage to reach 70%. So if the General Assembly doesn't do anything, the carbon impact is only going to get worse. That impact is at least, according to the manufacturers of the equipment, it's 1/4 of a ton CO2. According to some estimates, the net effect is about 1 ton. So when you start thinking about thousands and thousands of tons of carbon impact, I think that this is a wonderful opportunity. And that leads me to the final point, which is very simple. This is something that Virginia families really do want. We know that because we are talking to them. And right now, we are sending families from Maryland and Virginia to North Carolina. That doesn't need to be. And that's because with Delegate Taylor's bill and with the one that passed this House last year, this chamber last year, the point is to give families that option. I'd be happy to answer questions, but that's my point.
Yeah, if I could ask you, just in terms of the environmental impact, you said it, I think you said it was a green option, but what happens to all the liquid waste? How does it impact the ecosystem?
Mr. Chairman, it's an excellent question because the beauty of it is that throughout the 20 states, it's perfectly inert. It is a complete It's a liquid that only includes amino acids, salts, soaps, and it is absolutely utilized well in many municipal water systems. So it becomes part of our water system. But the family goes home with the ashes that otherwise would have been produced with all of the gases and including the mercury that would otherwise go up a smokestack. And that's the difference.
Okay, Senator Pillion's got a question.
So the hydrolysis process, is that just water, or are there other chemicals involved that have to be treated and put into our sewage system?
It's an excellent question, but the body is already more than 60% water. And the answer to your question is it's about 90%, 95% water solution. It is heated and it's used either sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide at a 5% solution. And that is enough to actually handle the remains in a way that then can be recycled easily.
Okay, I think Senator Rome is waiting with a question.
I'll be speaking to the bill at the appropriate time because I can answer some of the questions that have been coming up.
Okay, I think now would be an appropriate time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, to speak to the bill for a moment. So, a few things to know here. Number one is that you're getting up to 30% more ashes, actually, from aquamation than you would get from a typical cremation. And a big part of that is because when you're using flames at 1600, 1800 degrees for a traditional basically for traditional cremation, you're sending a lot of that inorganic matter that you're also now dissolving going up into the air. And so this actually preserves a lot more of that organic matter that is that broken down into like basically the water source substance that you're talking about. That comes out, but you are also still, because you're doing a process here that's between 200 and 300 degrees instead of 1600 to 1800 degrees, you're using a lot less energy in order to create that, but you get a lot more ashes from it. And in the same way that when a body naturally breaks down, if you have a body that's either in a casket, or you could even say, if you are in favor of embalming, and dear God, never embalm me for all of my death, what ends up happening is that all that liquid that ends up coming out of you, that's organic waste. And that organic waste ends up having to go through whatever filtration process, just like any other thing, right? And so here you have a body, in this case, in an aquamation case, that has now broken down the organic matter, and everything else that is left is the inorganic matter, only you're getting a lot more of it. You're using a whole lot less energy, by magnitudes less energy, because in order to get flames up to 1600 to 1800 degrees, the amount of fuel that you have to use is significant. Aquamation, please correct me if I'm wrong, is basically like if a family of four, if every person pretty much took a shower within a day, in terms of the amount of water that you're using. And so you're using less to get more. And that's kind of the bottom line. And it is a considerably greener way for a body to quickly accelerate through a decomposition process than it is through traditional cremation.
Thank you, Senator Rome. I understand there was a work group in 2022 that provided recommendations, and this bill is consistent with the work group?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. I believe that we have someone else waiting to testify in support or against? Okay. Is there anyone else in favor before we turn to opposition? Okay. Please come forward.
I want to thank the committee.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Jeff Caruso with the Virginia Catholic Conference. This bill deals with the technical aspects of bringing alkaline hydrolysis to Virginia, what words need to be added to the law, what procedures to put in place, what containers to use, how to treat the water, what permits and approvals are needed. But I would submit to you that there's a more fundamental consideration here. Just because the technology and the expertise to do something exists, just because something can be done, should we as a Commonwealth proceed with this or not? Is this an industry we want to invite into Virginia? Is this good public policy to do so? I would submit to you that the answer is no, and I want to provide two very quick reasons. First, look at what alkaline hydrolysis involves. It's a process in which human remains are liquefied and disposed of in the sewer system. It was said that the remains can be reduced to a powder form, and that is partially true, but even when it is reduced to a powder form, the vast majority of the remains in every instance is liquefied and it's put into the sewer system. And we think this fails to give human remains the respect they deserve. Second, look at the words that this bill uses. It refers to waste from the alkaline hydrolysis process and wastewater emissions of effluent. Human remains are not waste or effluent or emissions. How we in Virginia treat our dead and refer to our dead is evidence of what we as Virginians consider human beings to be. Please do not bring this to Virginia. Thank you for considering our views.
Thank you. Okay, Senator Rome.
Mr. Chair, question for the witness. If Mr. Caruso would take the microphone again. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would ask the witness in this case, what part of embalming is a more respectful, basically disposition of human remains at this point compared to aquamation?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rome, thank you for the question. In our view, the process of pouring the liquefied remains down the drain is what we view as being disrespectful to the remains of a human person.
Follow-up question, Mr. Chairman.
Sarah Rome.
In that case, then I would ask the witness, Mr. Chair, what happens to the liquid from a body during the embalming process? If he could walk us through in detail what happens to those remains, including from the time that they are exiting the body and being replaced with formaldehyde, what part of that is more respectful than what happens at the end result of aquamation?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rome, I would say that in the case of embalming, what you're doing is preserving the body. And in the case of the alkaline hydrolysis, what you're doing instead is you're liquefying the vast majority of the remains.
Mr. Chair, final question.
Final question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question that I was asking on that was not about the preservation of the body being via embalming, but what happens with the fluids, what happens with all the organic matter that is being released from the body during the embalming process. When it is being removed, what happens to all that organic matter that is now no longer part of that body?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rome, I would say again that what we're seeking to do here is to have respect for the body, and the embalming process, in our view, does that, and this other process, in our view, does not.
Okay, Senator Reeves has a question, then we're going to go to Sarah McPike. We're spending a lot of time on this. I hope we can focus our discussion.
I'm conflicted as a Christian because I know what Corinthians says, be absent the bodies, be present with the Lord. I don't think I know anywhere in Scripture that tells me other than do not desecrate a body, do not do those things. So I'm now you really got me conflicted because embalming works, but this doesn't. So I don't understand where the Catholic Church defines the differences between all of these things. I don't know. Do you have an answer?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Reeves, thank you. Like I said, I mean, in our view, the one preserves the body and therefore respects it, and the other one does something different.
Okay, we're going to go to Senator McPike before we wrap this up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question for Mr. Caruso is, what is the stance on normal cremation and burning a body? I mean, you have dissipation of liquids in body that go up in smoke, flame, same principle but different. What's the stance on that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McPike, thank you. So with cremation, there can be, an urn, and that can be, preserved in a sacred space.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator McPike.
It's my understanding from the earlier testimony that the same thing is true here in terms of the remaining elements can be provided. Is that not true?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McPike, I would say that the difference here is that when you're liquefying the remains, the vast majority of the remains are not preserved.
Thank you. Okay, are there motions or further discussion so we can?
Move to report.
There's a motion and a second to report HB 52. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 8, no 7.
Okay, thank you. The bill is recommended for reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Okay, next on the sign-up list is Delegate Carr. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mr. Chairman, I have before you HB 1113, which updates the limits on job order contracting to reflect rising costs as well as to promote this highly efficient form of procurement. Job order contracting is widely used by local governments, K-12 schools, community colleges, historically black universities, as well as many others. The entity seeking goods or services consults a book that is the product of a rigorous competitive process to acquire the lowest cost quality bids. It offers an efficient and cost-effective solution. The bill before you increased the per job limit from $500,000 to $1 million and the total annual contracts from $600,000 to $10 million. Additionally, this bill limits the contract renewals to 3 terms. The bill passed the House 100-0, and hope the committee will consider this bill favorably.
Okay, are there members of the committee with questions for Delegate Carr? Okay, we have a motion and a second to report HB 1113. Unless there's further discussion, we'll indicate our preference on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Thank you. Okay, on our sign-up list, we have 2 more identical bills, which is HB 151. Okay, which is
Delegate Helmer.
Oh, Delegate Helmer's bill 151. This has to do with would need to be referred to Senate Finance, energy standards for certain local buildings. I believe this is identical to Senator McPike's SB 245. It passed this committee 13 yes, 0 no, and 2 abstentions. Okay, there's a motion and a second to report this bill, HB 151, and refer it to Finance. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Okay, that bill reports. Now we have HB 242, which is identical to Senate Bill 242, coincidentally. And let's see whose bill that was. 242. That's Delegate Bulliva's bill. And is that identical to your bill, Senator McPike, on the
Yes.
Procurement Act? Okay. And it was unanimous in this committee and unanimous in the full Senate. Is there a motion on it?
Move to report and re-refer to Finance.
Okay, motion to report and we refer to Finance 242. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay, that reports. Okay. In the queue, we've got 8 delegates. We've got Wright, then McClure, then Helmer, then Fagans, then Bulliva and Watts. So Delegate Wright, you're first. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 57 provides that an organization that is qualified to have a bake sale may also bring items to the bake sale of another organization that is qualified. And that sounds very simple. On page line 18, it says agencies that hold or participate in. And that's the additional language, or participate in, because there was some question as to whether an organization that could hold a bake sale and bring items could actually participate in another. The director of the Southfield Chamber of Commerce brought this to me. They wanted to be sure they was abiding within the law. So the only thing we did was just add the words "or participate in." And it's for things like fire departments and rescue squads and so forth that have fundraisers, and it allows other fire departments and rescue squads to bring bake sale items to the one who's actually holding the event.
Okay. Okay, I think this is a fairly simple bill. Is there any opposition? Anyone here to oppose HB 57?
Move to report.
Okay, there's no opposition. There's a motion to report. And a second. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
Okay, we've got Delegate McClure. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. HB 588 makes it easier for tenants to adjust and cope with the aftermath of a fire or casualty damage incident without being unduly burdensome to the landlords. This measure actually passed the House with widespread bipartisan support, and under current law, a renter unit is damaged by fire or some other accident, the landlord can terminate the lease in 14 days notice to the tenant. It's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to find a place within 2 weeks. So HB 588 requires that landlords make reasonable efforts to meet with the tenant whose units have been damaged by fire or other means to discuss the extent of the damage, and then also see if there are any reasonable alternatives to terminating the tenancy immediately. Mr. Chairman, I witnessed the need for this bill firsthand in our districts in Crystal City when a fire broke out in the boiler room of the Crystal Plaza Apartments on August 21st of last year. 3 weeks later, a community-wide notice was sent out to inform residents of 68 units that they would be forced to vacate their apartments in 14 days. Residents reported that this eviction notice was the only form of communication that they had received from the landlord, and in response to the community feedback, the landlord had a third-party expert reassess the damage, and then as a result, only 20 units were found to need immediate repairs, and so they determined that only 20 folks needed to move. Since then, I've worked with that landlord to craft this bill, and I'm happy to share with you all that we have complete peace in the valley on this with all stakeholders, including AO Bavama, the Realtors, Virginia Poverty Law Center, Home Virginia. So it's my hope that you vote favorably in favor of HB 588.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions from members of the, first Senator Locke, then Senator McPike?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Senator Locke.
Delegate McClure, is this your first time appearing before Senate General Laws?
Mr. Chair, Senator Locke, it is, and I knew you were going to ask me that question.
So my question, Mr. Chair, would be,
yes, Senator Locke.
What if the tenant caused the fire?
So, Madam Chair, excuse me, Mr. Chair, Senator Locke, if the tenant caused the fire, then it would not be, they would revert back to what is currently in law. So the landlord actually would not have to go through these steps. So we actually have a part in here that isn't unduly burdensome to the landlord that addresses that specific point.
Another question, Mr. Chair.
Senator Locke.
As a landlord, I'm very concerned about this type of legislation, so I'm a little hesitant to support something like this.
Thank you, Senator.
And Mr. Chair, Senator Locke, I appreciate that, and we have some landlords to speak to that particular concern, and so we have some folks here.
Okay, before we turn to them, we're going to have Senator McPike.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. So if the unit is damaged and the apartment's not tenable or something else is going on, where do they actually deliver the mail? Where do they deliver the notice?
Mr. Chair, it's up to the landlord. So we actually, in the code, gave them all sorts of reasonable, we put in the word reasonable so that it's up to the landlord to determine where they deliver the notice. So we're not going to be, again, burdensome to the landlord and tell them exactly how to deliver that notice, but that they've made reasonable attempts to deliver that notice to the tenant.
Follow-up question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So is there a cause of action if the tenant doesn't receive said notice?
Mr. Chairman, is that a question to the patron?
Yes, Delegate.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would say that I am not an attorney, but I do have some attorneys here who can answer that question, and we also have counsel if I can defer that to counsel.
Okay, we'll come to them in a moment. First, I'm going to turn to Senator Rouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we've established already, Delegate McClure, this is your first bill?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I have a question for the delegate. Mr. Chair, if my daughter is into doll houses and she uses a hot glue gun all the time, if she so happens to burn up her doll house, am I required to buy her a new one under this piece of legislation?
Mr. Chairman, I would say to the senator that as a great dad, you are required to do that, but under the Virginia Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, that would not be covered.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Are there those here who would like to speak in support of this legislation? You could just perhaps identify yourself and.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Christy Marrow with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. We do strongly support this legislation. What it does is it levels the playing field so that landlords and tenants will communicate when something like this happens, and that way the landlord will know what the tenant is experiencing in their unit, and the tenant will have the opportunity to meet with the landlord, talk with the landlord, get a second opinion if the landlord said the unit is uninhabitable and they don't agree. But the real goal here, and I think this is why we have all the stakeholders supporting it, is to just get the landlord and tenant to work together if one of these tragedies happen. We ask that, obviously, that you support the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Erin Corman with the Realtors. We also support the bill.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Sheila Herlihy with the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. We also support the bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Zach, and members of the committee. Zach Lemaster with Gentry Lock here on behalf of the Northern Virginia Apartment Association. We support the bill, and also Bisma Ahmed, who works for AOBA and VAMA, said that they also support the bill as well.
Thank you.
Chair, members of the committee, Laura Dawes with Housing Opportunities Made Equal, and we support the bill.
Hi, Penny Page on behalf of the YWCA of Richmond, supporting the bill.
Thank you. Okay. Well, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. Kashish with New Virginia Majority, and we support this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a motion and a second to report HB 588. Please indicate your preference on the voting board. Okay.
Ayes 12, noes 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, I feel the love.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day. Okay, Delegate Bulba, we're going to take you next because I understand you have another meeting to be at.
Yes, thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. And just so you know, Senator Locke, this is not my first time before general laws. So, Mr. Chairman, the first bill that I have is House Bill 876. I believe that is almost identical with the exception of one small amendment to Senator Williams-Graves' Senate Bill 526. And my understanding is that the stakeholders are good with this version and would prefer that this move on, and we'll just conform the other one over in the Senate if that is acceptable. And I'm happy to describe what the bill does to refresh your memory. But
This is the Resale Disclosure Act bill?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, yeah, why don't you just give us a real brief description?
Sure. And so this is something we passed last year, so the Resale Disclosure Act, and that's the one that brought all the resale disclosure provisions relating to common interest communities under one statute. And so that really helped in terms of streamlining and standardization. However, now that the act has been out there and practitioners have had a chance to test it out in the real world, there are a couple tweaks that we needed to make. This is something that the stakeholders all got together, so the realtors, common interest community folks, and that's basically what the bill does, is just do some cleanup now that we've had a chance to test out the bill.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or motions on? Okay, there's a motion and a second. Unless anyone's compelled to oppose it, we will vote on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So next I have House Bill 880. This is a recommendation of the Virginia Housing Commission, and I do believe it's identical to Senator Suravel's 341 as it passed out of the Senate. And so this is the one that just ensures that homeowners can't lose their primary residence in a common interest community for very small dollar assessments levied by the Common Interest Community Association. So I can go into more detail, but I think this one was identical.
let's just check with council. Is 880 need to be conformed, or is it
340, to Senate Bill 341?
just
The Senate bill number.
Senate Bill is 341, and I believe there was an amendment on the Senate floor that made them identical.
okay? Well, the question is if they're identical right now, we don't need to conform it. That's your understanding, Delegate?
My understanding.
We'll just be at ease for just a moment while we check that out, unless there's more about the bill that you need to tell us, or I think it's pretty clear.
Unless you want to hear it.
Okay, they are identical, so
Move to report.
there's a motion and a second to report HB 880. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, that bill reports.
All right, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do have one more, and I apologize. This one's probably not as quick or simple as the other ones, but I'll make it as fast as humanly possible. This is House Bill 1209.
Do you have amendments?
We have one small amendment that I believe that council has that would amend the word structural to capital when we're talking about components.
Okay, Senator McPike moves the amendment, and there's a second. Could the clerk just tell us where that amendment is?
Yes,
the
Mr. Chair, on
council.
line 73, after replacement, insert of, and then on lines 89 and 296, after of, strike structural and insert capital.
Okay. Does everyone understand the amendment? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the amended bill is before us.
All right. Move to report as amended.
Senator Rouse?
And you just help me just explain the bill a little bit more as I read it. I'm just a little confused.
No, I'd be happy to, and I'll try to, again, keep it really short. And so this bill implements 3 recommendations from the study of the adequacy of current laws addressing standards for structural integrity and for maintaining reserves to repair, replace, and restore capital components in common interest communities. The impetus for that study was the tragedy in Florida back in 2021, where you had 98 people who died from a collapse of a condominium. Adding to that tragedy really was that there were a lot of warning signs, but the board waited too long to be able to take action, and there were actually some deficiencies with respect to board power in order to be able to react and respond. In Virginia, we actually had a similar close call. So up in Alexandria, we had a condominium that actually dropped and shifted several inches. It was a result of extensive water damage. In that case, we were lucky. We just displaced families, but they had to actually jack up the whole thing. And so in 2020, we commissioned a study, Senate Bill 740, to dive into what we need to do to prevent those kind of tragedies in Virginia. And so it was very robust. Those recommendations were presented to the Housing Commission. Chairman Locke will recall that we didn't have enough time to go through additional discussion on that. But what this does is implement the 3 major recommendations that deal with common interest community governance. And so I can go through those in more detail, but that's kind of the impetus for the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Rouse.
I don't mean to belabor the point. I'm just trying to understand. So this does not give, and we say common interest communities, but we're talking about HOAs as well.
We're talking about HOAs.
All
we're
right.
talking about
Does this give them more authority to levy, fees or expenses on their residents?
Yeah. So let me walk through specifically the 3 components. And so the first one removes statutory language that we have in our code that allows owners to actually rescind those special assessments. And so you've got a board that stepped up to the plate. They've made the call that they need to increase assessments to deal with capital needs. We actually have language in our code that provides for property owners by a majority at a meeting to reverse that. And so that's harmful in that you're allowing for short-term needs, often aesthetic, to basically trump the long-term structural capital needs that are associated with maintaining an HOA or a condo association. So that again, it's language that we inserted into the code that really harms a board's ability to be able to react and respond. The second one is to confirm board authority to meet capital needs through special assessments. And so a lot of times you'll have older declarations that are silent with respect to these things, and so this is a fill in the gap. And so indeed it does allow a board to be able to impose special assessments where a declaration specifically says or is silent on whether you can or not. And the final one is allowing boards to have the authority to borrow for structural components or to fund recommended reserves, again, as long as the declaration doesn't state otherwise, and so it fills the gap. And one of the issues in Florida was that the anticipated cost of dealing with those capital needs was $16.2 million. Coming up with a special assessment to deal with those needs in a timely manner was cost prohibitive. And that was part of the problem, is you just had these massive assessments. And the ability to borrow is a way to go ahead and spread those costs out over time, and also to make sure that those costs are borne by future property owners and not just the people who are living right there.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Senator.
So we're talking about, condominiums and not individual dwellings where there's an HOA for a neighborhood, right? The HOA couldn't use this as a way to go and redo someone's driveway because it may be out of, ordinance, and then charge them the money to redo it. This is not what this.
You're absolutely correct, Senator Rouse. This deals with common capital components, right?
Okay.
And so nothing to do with an individual property, but if you've got a road, you've got a stormwater management facility, something bigger, this just gives them the authority to be able to do that.
I'm clear. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I understand there's someone waiting in line to testify. Is there anyone in the room who wants to speak in favor of this legislation? Okay, let's go to our online witness.
Hello, my name is Carrie Burkholder. I want to express some concerns about this. My big concern about this is the language, such other areas of association responsibility, because it's not defined. And I can tell you from my own experience, my association decided a couple years ago that they were going to replace privacy fences on the backyards of individual private properties and charge everybody for them, even though only half of the members of the association had these fences. They collected well over $600,000, and there's only 129 homes and townhomes here, before we were able to unravel this and get that money returned to us. Now, first of all, the way these are set up, assessments are not supposed to be used on private individual properties, and this does not stop them from doing that. This really opens the floodgates and allows associations to just spend assessments wherever they want to. It also, there's a problem with Section 51.55.1, 2305 of the Virginia Code under Common Interest Communities, the Subdivided Land Sales Act, that includes property owners.
Ma'am, I don't think this bill has that code section you're referring to.
But it contradicts that code section, because that code section requires that prospective home buyers have an understanding of what their assessments are going to pay for, and that the association cannot increase assessments, pass special assessments, or collect assessments unless the purpose is for maintenance of the common areas and common facilities. So again, when you have this language that says such other areas of association responsibility, it's not defined, and it clearly goes beyond the common area. I don't have a problem with the common area upkeep, but that one phrase, that is the problem that could allow a lot of other things to come in here that are unintended. So I just ask that you take another look at this and consider removing that language or focusing it in a way that it says what you want it to say and doesn't open up the floodgates.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, Delegate Bulova.
Yeah, and I think I can be helpful in this regard because that is an issue that I believe we caught over in the House with an amendment. And so there was some language in there that was a little broad in terms of any valid purpose. And we actually struck that and said for the maintenance, replacement, repair, and restoration of capital components and for funding recommended reserves. So I'm hoping that that gets to that issue because it was a little nebulous over in the House and we want to nail that down.
It is in there.
Thank you.
It's under section I.
Okay.
It's been stricken in the House.
Okay. Yes, Senator McBride.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the delegate has done a good job at explaining the bill, what the purpose is. I know there's been issues in Northern Virginia and Virginia Beach. Any time you have buildings that interface with salt water or salt air and the rest of it, the amount of deterioration indicated that occurs accelerates, and that's why condo associations do reserve studies. That's why we have this portion of the law, and this seeks to strengthen it to frankly make sure those structures are protected. And I so move that it be reported.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to report HB 1209. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, the bill reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.
As amended.
Thank you. Okay, we've got Delegate Fagans and then Delegate Watts. Oh, Delegate Krisak, are you chairing another meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go up to appropriation.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This won't take long. This is House Bill 527. There's a substitute.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to adopt the substitute for HB 527. Please indicate your support by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this does is it authorizes nonprofit organizations to conduct electronic athletic event drawings. So you know the 50-50 raffles, you see it, like if you go to Washington Nationals game or something, they have this 50-50 raffle. We have the 50-50 raffle already in the state, in the Commonwealth, but it's a paper product. This will let you do it for electronic, and it's for the it's for things like professional sports, college, NASCAR, stock, Indy, and in any college as well, any institution of higher education. So it's just to make the paper electronic.
Okay. If members of the committee understand the bill, is there anyone here to speak in support of HB 527? Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Chris Lloyd from Garwoods Consulting. We represent the two NASCAR tracks here in Virginia. I want to thank Delegate Krisak for putting in the bill. We didn't know it existed until it got put in, and we saw it and said it's an answered prayer. Because the current system with paper tickets is unnecessarily burdensome and expensive, and in fact, most of the money wasn't going to the charity. In that case, so we didn't do these raffles in Virginia. So they are great for fan engagement and look forward to doing them in Virginia going forward if this passes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else feel compelled to speak for or against? Okay, there's a motion and a second to report and refer to Senate Finance, HB 527. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Okay, thank you.
15, no zero.
Okay, Delegate Fagan, sorry to cut you off there, but you're up.
Good afternoon, Chairman. See, I have two bills today.
Okay, which one would you like to start with?
House Bill 651, cybersecurity.
651. Okay.
House Bill 651, the Cyber Civilian Corps, requires that the Virginia Information Technology Agency assess the establishment of the Cyber Civilian Corps. This Civilian Cyber Corps will provide mutual aid to the Commonwealth and its political subdivisions for the purpose of protecting critical information and responding to incidents. The overall intent is to work toward enhancing the state's capability to respond and to help mitigate cybersecurity threats through a coordinated and organized volunteer effort. Michigan established the Cyber Civilian Corps in 2017 and has been an excellent model since then, and I hope that the committee will support this initiative.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee for the delegate? Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rouse.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Fagan, this is your first bill before this committee, is it not?
Mr. Chairman, I would answer the senator that yes, it is my first time in front of the committee.
All right.
Okay, Senator Rouse, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I will follow. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In reading this bill, Delegate Fagans, what branch would the corpse be assigned to?
It will be signed with under VITA. Mr. Chairman, the Cyber Civilian Corps will fall with under VITA. They would all be stringently looked at, and so in terms of, because it's a volunteer agency, each individual would be invited. They would then have a background check done by the state police.
Quick. Mr. Chairman, one more follow-up.
Senator Rouse.
Delegate Fagans, what would be the highest rank one could reach in the corps?
The highest rank that they would be able to, Mr. Chairman, I'll answer the senator, that the highest rank that someone would be able to achieve is a volunteer helping out their Commonwealth.
What a noble rank. Okay. Okay, are there any other
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No more
questions for the delegate? Okay, is there anyone here to testify in support? Anyone who has a differing view? Okay. There's a motion and a second to report HB 651. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
No, 0.
Okay, delegate, now you have your second bill.
Yes, I do. Mr. Chairman and committee, before you have House Bill 701, assisting in terms of routine maintenance, amending the Virginia Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. This bill clarifies the notification period for routine maintenance to protect both renters and landlord maintenance personnel. This was a constituent-driven bill. I'm happy to bring this forward. Currently, there's only a minimum notification period of 72 hours, and there's not a maximum notification period for routine maintenance. House Bill 701 requires that routine maintenance be performed within 14 days of delivery of notice, and the notice shall state the last date which maintenance shall be performed. I'm happy to announce that this passed unanimously, and this does not affect emergency maintenance or maintenance requested by the member.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Delegate, what's the repercussions if the landlord doesn't do it? Because I know people that they just go in their door and don't give them any notice. What is a tenant supposed to do, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, I would state to the senator that this is the routine maintenance, so that's normally being required to be done. For example, if a filter needs to be replaced, a maintenance team would then request to send an email or another notification period to the renter. Before this, they could potentially send an email or notification 6 months in advance, and then if a renter did not happen to put that on their schedule, they could walk in. This is kind of how the incident happened. So we worked together with renters and advocates for homeowners as well to make sure we could find a comprehensive way. And the 14 days was the best solution to make sure that we could address both sides of this issue.
Mr. Chairman, my question.
Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What if the leasing agency doesn't give you the notice to the homeowner or to the leasee or the homeowner or the occupant? Mm-hmm. Well, what are the repercussions for them if they don't adhere to the 14 days?
Well, currently within, Mr. Chairman, I answer the senator that currently within the code that there is already a requirement for them to do a minimum notification of 72 hours. This is just making a maximum notification. If say, for example, Mr. Chairman, I would say to the senator that if they came in to do maintenance and they could not fulfill it within that time period, they would need to state within that time period when they expect to be fulfilled.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator Head.
Yeah, just so I want to just test for understanding here because I think I get this. I want to make sure I get this. What you're saying is that previously, if there was a maintenance to be done, they could send a notice because the requirement was it had to be sent out at least 72 hours in advance. But they could send you a notice that was 6 months, that sometime in the next 6 months we're going to be coming and doing this. And it may not be convenient for you in the next 6 months or whatever to do that. And what you're doing now is saying, we're going to come do this, and we're going to do it sometime in the next 14 days. And that's the limitation that you're doing that. So it really is protecting the tenant from the practices of a landlord that's trying, where in the past the landlord has been trying to meet the requirement easily, but making it very difficult. And then if they didn't get there, if the landlord came and you weren't there and you couldn't let them in or whatever they were doing, I know they've got keys and things like that, but if they said, well, you weren't there and we couldn't do it, and so we start the process over. And so this actually will probably help keep things better maintained.
Mr. Chairman, I'll answer that. That is 100% correct. This is really making sure to protect landlords and renters, which is providing a maximum notification period. Unfortunately, what happened was an individual potentially had walked in with a notification that was well past what somebody would normally think or remember. And then so we wanted to just make sure to put in the code at least 14 days notification.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone here to speak in support of HB 701? Yes, come forward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Christy Mara with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. We do support the bill and think it's important to have that closing time so that, as Senator Head pointed out, people aren't left wondering for 6 months when maintenance might come by to do the work. And in response to Senator Reeves's question, if a landlord just didn't know about this requirement, didn't send the notice, and just came by and knocked on your door and said, Senator Reeves, can we fix your heating system now? You could say, sure, come on in, it's a good time. Or you could say, I'm sorry, now is a really bad time, and they would leave and then give you the appropriate notice. So there's nothing harmful, it's just a reset so that everything can move more smoothly.
Okay, I've got Senator Hedman, Senator Rouse. Okay, Senator Rouse.
Just one last question for the delegate. So let's just say I have a young working adult in my house who just so happens to be my son. How much notification would I have to give him to clean his room?
Well, knowing that your son always advises and goes with his father, who has always made sure to provide proper instruction, I believe that 24 hours notice for that would be suffice.
Thank you. Good answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Unless there's further questions, I'll entertain motions on HB 701. Motion and a second to report HB 701. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, we've got Delegate Watts and then Delegate Hope, and Weber will be following on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have House Bill 214 before you.
Okay, committee will direct its attention to HB 214.
The genesis of HB 214 is to codify a Virginia Employment Commission ruling on October 23rd. October 2023. Essentially, this grows out of as you see in the bill before you, lines 21 through 25, which were added after what I'm going to call the accountability of professionally managed common interest communities. And at that time, about a year or so later, it was recognized that involuntary homeowner common interest communities, you had individuals who were resident of the community who might be doing high-level services for that association where compensation might be appropriate so that that volunteer could be somewhat compensated for the level of effort that it would require for the professional services that they would be provided. And as you see on line 21, that is limited to bookkeeping, billing, or record keeping. Not such as, but those three items. And the Virginia Employment Commission, however, looked at a particular homeowners association and said, whoops, wait a minute, we think that's an employer-employee relationship. And that was what the hearing was about. The hearing, however, concluded that these were to be regarded as independent contractors, so therefore the language before you codifies that, and it makes it very specific as you look at the changes to 60.2 to 10, that at the end of this bill, it's referring specifically to the code section that has to do with common interest communities, so that there's no loophole created that some other relationship might so qualify.
Okay, and Delegate Watts, what happens if the person is like full-time? I mean, what if they're a full-time employee of the association and happen to be a resident?
If that is in fact what the but again, this is not professionally managed.
Only volunteers.
This is volunteer managed. If that's in fact what they decide to create an employer-employee relationship, they could so do with all of the appropriate requirements that would require payroll withholding and so on. But again, this just contemplates that a resident, and I do want to underscore that, who is properly bonded, providing these three specific services for the appropriate management of the CIC, would be able to be compensated without creating an employer-employee relationship.
Thank you. Okay, are there members of the panel with questions for Delegate Watts? There's a motion and a second to report HB 214. Unless there's anyone in the audience who's waiting to testify on this particular bill, we'll vote on the voting board.
Ayes 12, noes 3.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. One personal note, Senator Rouse, we have some very good new freshmen in the House, and I think they have requited themselves very well.
You waited till after you got the vote, after you got the bill out to say that. Okay. Next up, we've got Delegate Hope, and then on deck is Delegates Weber and Maldonado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 311, I do believe that there's a line amendment.
Okay, there's a line amendment that on line 7, after act, it would insert the words local public bodies electronic, and then further on line 7, after proposals, it would strike the remainder of line 7 through system on line 8. Is there a motion and a second to the amendment? Okay, all in favor of the amendment will say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the amended bill is before us. Delegate Hope.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This bill just allows, whenever you're submitting your bid to local localities, that you're allowed to submit it electronically. You can either use the EVA filing or some other electronic submission. This came to me from a constituent who submitted a bid. They had to get it in through the mail, and they had some issues with the delivery, and they missed it by a day. This is 2024. We should be able to have that option to electronically get your submissions in.
Okay,
and that's all the bill does.
This specifically requires EVA, the Commonwealth Statewide Electronic Procurement System, right?
Well, yes, Mr. Chairman, or some other electronic submission platform. So it's an either
I see.
or.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to report HB 311 as amended. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay. Now your next bill.
Next bill, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, House Bill 517 would designate the honeybee as the state pollinator.
There's a lot of buzz about this bill.
There's a lot of buzz, Mr. Chairman. I want to tell you.
Okay.
Let me ask you, I think it's a fair question to ask. Why the honeybee? Well, two reasons. Why? One, well, there's a few. First of all, I have over 1,000 petitions here in support all across the Commonwealth supporting doing this. But one is there's historic significance to Virginia's history of the honeybee. And that's right. Well, they came in through Jamestown in 1622. When the settlers came over, the native pollinators were not doing a good job of pollinating their apples, peaches, potatoes, and tomatoes, okra, field greens, soybeans, watermelon, and peanuts that we all enjoy today, but they weren't growing. And the pollinators are very necessary, as you know, to make sure that you're growing and you're successful. So they sent a letter to the king. The king sent the honeybees over, and of course, Jamestown prospered. And they came in through Jamestown. We wouldn't have the honeybees here but for in 1622 when the king sent over the honeybees. Of course, there's the agriculture significance as well. I mentioned how efficient they are as pollinators, all the different things that they pollinate. Over 100 foods in the U.S. are pollinated by honeybees. Economically, foods pollinated by the honeybee and local bees are an enormous part of our assets, $15 billion each and every year to our assets. And of course, there's the honey. You can't discard the honey and the significance that it pays to our Virginia economy. Lastly, 19 southern states have already designated the honeybee as their state insect or some other state emblem. And so I will stop, Mr. Chairman, but that is
thank you.
the significance of the honeybee.
Okay, so there was a motion from Senator Pillion,
Mr. Chairman.
to report, and there's a second from Senator Reeves and comment from Senator Rome.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the patron and possibly an amendment. So question for the patron on this is, after hearing from someone stopping by my office this morning who is, by the way, a Prince William County resident, that person said that the honeybee is not native to Virginia, which the patron has acknowledged in opening remarks. However, the bumblebee, and I believe the American bumblebee, is native to Virginia. So therefore, Mr. Chair, would the patron consider it a friendly amendment to, on line 47, add an S to the end of pollinators, and then add where it says honeybee with the scientific name, and then add and American bumblebee, Bombus pennsylvanicus.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I'm fine with adding another bee, and I've heard that from other people. But I don't think that the other people that want to see another pollinator agree on what that bee is. But I'm just here for the honeybee. I'd be fine if you wanted to add some other pollinator, but I think that there could be different pollinators as well, too. But I will just point out that this isn't the only thing that we're not adding to our state emblems that's not native. The state beverage, milk, as we all know, is not native to, cattle was first brought to our Virginia in 1609. The state dog, the American foxhound, was brought to Virginia in 1615. And we just named the Chincoteague pony from Spain. So we have some history here of naming non-native species to our state emblems. But to answer your question, I'd be fine if that's what the committee wanted to do, but I will say I'm not sure there's agreement of what that other native pollinator would be.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
There's a motion and a second to amend the bill? Okay, Senator von Valkenburg would like to speak to the amendment.
Speaking to the amendment, Mr. Chair, I don't think we should give a trophy to every bee. And I do not think that we should create a Christmas tree bill here. So I'm going to vote against the amendment.
It's a Christmas bee.
Okay, let's just get back to order here. What?
Start now.
I'm losing a little bit of track of what's happening over here. Senator Rome, you were serious with your amendment?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Okay. Is there?
No, there's no second.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Eric.
I promise I'm not going to be disruptive, but Delegate Hope, do you know whether or not there is another request for any other honeybee to be the official state pollinator? Is this the only one?
This is the only honeybee that we're asking for. If there's another bee is what you're asking?
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, they'd have to bring their own bill, but I know that I have heard other people talk about other pollinators, but there's no agreement on what other native pollinators they might want to add.
But thank you, Mr. Chair, to your awareness, there is not another request this session for any other bee to be the pollinator.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I do not have no aware one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. The bill before us, HB 517, with this groundswell of public support that Delegate Hope has brought to our attention, is before us. And is there a motion? There's a motion and a second to report HB 517 as introduced or as brought to us. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Hope.
And that flew out of here.
Okay. Now we've got Delegate Weber, and then will be Delegate Maldonado.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I have an amendment.
This is HB 723.
Yes, sir.
Would the council just like to read the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On line 59, after E, strike the remainder of line 59 and all of line 60, and insert, the requirements of this section govern the conduct of meetings of the Board of Directors without regard to whether the Property Owners Association is incorporated or unincorporated, but shall not be interpreted to supersede corporate authorities otherwise established by law or the governing documents.
Okay. Delegate Weber, do you want to just clarify that? Because it looks like that's your changing, that's all the new language in the bill where we're replacing it.
I guess it would be a substitute.
Okay, do you want to explain that to us?
Yes, sir. So the bill, it came through, the idea came through us, through a constituent that is dealing with his homeowners association. And the bill is intended to clear up a conflict between the Property Owners Association Act and the Non-Stock Corporation Act when it comes to providing notice for board of directors meetings. The bill, as it came over from the House, clarified the old code that this code section from the Property Owners Association takes precedent for groups like homeowners associations. And what the new language does is we believe further clarify that other authorities for calling a board meeting are not invalidated just because they don't appear in this section. The bill isn't intended to change how the process works. It's just to provide clarity for small HOAs and how they conduct business.
There's a motion and a second to report HB 723. Well, first, did we vote on the amendment? We have to vote to accept the amendment? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. So then there was a motion to report the bill as amended and a second. HB 723. Let's indicate our preference on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, now we have Delegate Maldonado, and in queue after her is Delegate Munden King, Delegate Arnold, Delegate Lefwich, and Delegate Sullivan. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. HB 728, surplus technological equipment, is before us. And this is a very easy sort of clarifying bill. It permits the Department of General Services to establish procedures for a buyback or trade-in agreement with a purchasing vendor for surplus technological equipment. So currently, state agencies and institutions of education are permitted to enter into contracts with technology vendors to purchase equipment to meet their needs. However, under current law, institutions can dispose of technology at the end of the equipment's life cycle by either holding an auction, donating materials to nonprofit or veteran organizations, or destroying the equipment due to its sensitive data. But under this same law, we do not specifically give state agencies the power to participate in a buyback or trade-in programs in which the third-party purchasing vendor can buy the devices back from the agency to refurbish for later use. So the legislation is to amend the current surplus laws to explicitly allow state agencies and institutions of education to participate in buyback and trade-in programs without penalty. We've worked with VITA and DGS to ensure that this legislation will not interfere with their security and data privacy requirements and will maintain the purchasing vendor requirements set forth in by VITA. So, and there's also no negative fiscal impact to the legislation because the legislation doesn't change anything other than clarifying what is allowed. With that, I will hope it is the pleasure of the body to pass the legislation.
Okay. There's a motion and a second report. Before we do that, Senator Head's got a question. I have a question. So this is to allow the state to sell back equipment or to purchase equipment?
purchase. So currently, Mr. Chair, currently, state agencies and institutions of education are permitted to enter into contracts with vendors to purchase equipment to meet their needs. But at the end of the life cycle of that equipment, our agencies are not permitted to enter into buyback programs. And with the refurbishing, there's the opportunity for that equipment to be refurbished to then resell again at more competitive pricing.
Okay, and just to make sure I've got it right, it's to take equipment that is owned by the state currently and to allow that to be sold back to a vendor rather than just disposed of.
Correct. Well, there are a couple of, Mr. Chair, there are a couple of things we can do at the end of the life, but one of them is not enter into the buyback and refurbish programs, and we're just expanding it, making it clear that they can do that.
Thank you. Okay, Senator Head.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I think I got to the answer with all of that. I just want to make sure that there's nothing in this that opens a door, and I don't believe that there is, to anything that might be on a hard drive that was sensitive information that would go back, that would be covered in another area from a data security standpoint.
Delegate?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So right now, under current law, and this does not change that, if there is sensitive data on the equipment, it would be destroyed or removed prior to allowing for the refurbishing.
Okay, there's a motion, a second, to report HB 728. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Thank you. Okay, next we've got Delegate Munden King, and coming up is Delegate Arnold. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Before you is House Bill 814, a piece of legislation to help us improve our tourism. So come with me on a journey to a colorful and significant fixture in Virginia's history since the 17th century. Upon stepping onto this beautiful plantation, visitors find themselves captured by our charm and sense of Southern hospitality. This is a destination for anyone seeking a taste of the rich history of the South. So that is a description of one of the plantations where hundreds of African Americans were enslaved, and that's how it's described on our tourism website. Many of these are submitted. And so what my bill would do is ask our tourism authority to work with subject matter experts to create standards for how we talk about properties that enslaved African Americans here in the Commonwealth. And this passed with bipartisan support in the other chamber, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Motion and a second to re-refer to finance is the motion, actually. HB 814. Unless there's discussion, we'll go ahead and vote.
You probably want to hit that button, Suhas.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and members
Thank
of
you.
the committee.
Okay, Delegate Arnold.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Welcome.
Mr. Chair, I've got HB 428. This is a authorization for DCR to quit claim and release real property rights in the county of Wythe related to an off-site water well. They're just seeking authorization to release those rights. It was a communal well, and DCR has developed its own well subsequent to the acquisition here. This is related to the construction of the New River Trail State Park.
Okay.
I've been here for years.
Okay, were there any questions for Delegate Arnold? Okay. If not, there was a motion to report HB 428. In a second, unless there's discussion, please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Okay, then we've got Delegate Leftwich, and coming up will be Delegate Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 680
I would require the Department of Human Resource Management to develop a statewide recruitment policy designed to provide.
Please direct your attention to Delegate Leftwich and HB 680.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This would be designed to provide guidance to state agencies on how to remove post-secondary degree requirements from hiring considerations and recruit qualified employees utilizing appropriate baseline requirements, the specifics of which are outlined in the bill. And so basically what we're trying to do is break down barriers of employment for those who have the skills and experience but don't have a four-year college degree. And having sent two myself already and having two twins as juniors in Virginia institutions, you know, I can attest personally to the cost of expensive college educations. I know that many people from my own experiences are eminently qualified to do a lot of the jobs that college graduates have.
Okay, and does this doesn't change hiring requirements, it requires an evaluation on how to decide which state positions would not require a degree?
So right now, from my understanding, a lot of the job postings we have and requirements within the Commonwealth require post-secondary degree. And so this would require that department to go through all these job listings and say, okay, which jobs are more or just as amenable to have someone be able to fulfill the job requirements who do not have a college degree. And not to belabor the point, but I do have some examples of which type of job postings could be amenable to those who have experience. Supervisors, support specialists, administrative assistants, software developers, quality assurance, you know, some accounting and nursing and legal in the private sector. Maryland did this, and they were able to fill lots of jobs.
I think Senator Reeves has a question, and
It's not a question, a motion at the proposed time if there's no one
Well,
opposed.
first we have Senator Rome in the queue. Did you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. A question for the patron. So, question for the patron on this one would be, do we have particular vacancies that we're having problems filling right now, and for particular fields right now where we're asking for these post-secondary degrees and we don't have, you know, enough applicants coming forward, or is it the sort of thing where it's just it should have never had that requirement by design?
So I think I'm not aware personally of positions that are going unfilled because of this. I think it's more of a nature of perhaps we should have never done this to begin with. Perhaps we ought to understand that folks that have real employment experience and skill sets that didn't require $150,000 to obtain are just as qualified to do the job as anyone else. You know, statistically, there are certain groups of citizens that where college degrees are not as achievable because of financial considerations, and this would open the door for a lot more diverse populations to have the same job opportunities as those who have the financial resources to obtain a college degree.
And there's, if I might, there's a bunch of specificity in the bill on page 3, and I was just wondering, has DHRM spoken to you at all about this, or the administration?
I have talked to someone in the department, and they had a hand in developing this.
Okay, so they didn't have any problem with the language, they approved it, in fact.
No, this was not all me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this bill, if it's reported, will go to Senate Finance, and the motion would be to report and re-refer. Okay, there's a motion and a second for HB 680 to be reported and re-referred to Senate Finance. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, Delegate Sullivan.
That's Bill 120.
And let me ask, if Delegate Sewell's not in the room, can we call her and tell her she'll be next? Oh, thank you.
Oh, I thought I was the only one standing between you and Valentine's dinner, Mr. Chair.
No.
Well, nevertheless, I'll try to be quick. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 120 came to me from a constituent who had a particularly unfortunate experience, and we're worried that others have had the same. It would simply, here's what happened. She's a nurse of 35 or 7 years, something like that, and she was practicing in D.C., so her Virginia license, she let her Virginia license lapsed, moved back to Virginia, renewed her license, wrote a check for her license. That check bounced, obviously inadvertently. and through a series of unfortunate events, notice to her of that fact never got to her. So DPOR suspended her license, and as she searched for new employment, the website that future employers or potential employers look to displayed that she had been suspended and at least implied that she had had a disciplinary action entered against her, which of course derailed all of her employment opportunities. So what HB 120 would do is simply make clear that when DPOR or the Department of Health Professions suspends a license merely because an applicant bounces a check, that it won't consider or describe that suspension as a disciplinary action on anything that's public facing, so that future employers won't get the wrong idea.
Okay, thank you. I think is everyone clear on the bill? No. There's a motion to report, and is there a second? Second. Okay. Unless there's further discussion, we'll vote on the voting board.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you. Okay, so I think one of our last bills, we'll wait for the patron. Oh, she's here. Great. Welcome.
Well, we have a rule, the last one dies. So.
Be nice, Senator McPike.
7:38.
Good afternoon, members of the committee.
Welcome.
May I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay. I am here before you with House Bill 738, which expands the definition of armed services. As many of you know, this bill will simply allow for members serving in the U.S. Space Force to receive the same benefits and privileges in Virginia as other members who are serving in other branches of the U.S. Armed Forces. This bill has passed through the Senate unanimously, and therefore I ask that you all look very kindly upon it as well.
But this is the Senate.
I know it passed through the Senate as well. I was referencing the Senate.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were referencing, it has passed through where did it pass?
It passed through the Senate unanimously.
Not yet.
Not my bill.
Oh.
Similar language, the companion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was unclear.
Tough crowd.
Okay. Whatever it is, it
Noted to never be last.
This
House Bill 738.
Seems like it's out of this world. Okay. Okay, so this just merely adds Space Force to the official definition of the armed services in Virginia?
Correct.
Chairman.
Okay, Senator Rum.
Mr. Chairman, could the patron tell us what the the Senate cognate was? What bill number?
I will gladly tell you. I believe that Senator Reeves would gladly like to help me with that as I pull it up. So it's his bill.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't quite hear the question. What was it?
Did you have a cognate of this particular bill?
I did.
Okay.
The question that maybe some people have is we left off two entities when it came to the retirement side of, we left off NOAA and we left off, I forget the other form where they're commissioned officers, but that had to do with the tax break, not this bill.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Nothing's come out.
Gotcha. Noted.
Okay, so do people understand the bill? We're adding Space Force to the list of the armed services in the United States. There's a motion to report and a question from Senator Rouse.
We're not including the cyber civilian corps in this, are we?
No.
Oh, okay, just making sure.
Thank you. Okay, so there's a motion and a second to report HB 738. Please indicate your preference on the voting board.
You know about the cyber civilian corps.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Okay, with no other business, the committee will rise.
Good job.
The Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.